Okay, everybody. Steve Kellner here. Welcome to TMI Day 1. If this is the first thing you've come to, hopefully you've been looking at it all day. This morning I watched Morning Manna, and then
Can anyone hear me? Wave at me if you can hear me. Okay. We may have lost Steve there. Steve, you're frozen. Okay. Well, we'll wait to see if Steve comes back to life. That's a good free shot, though. Let me just introduce our special guest. We have Neil Smith, all the way from the Western Territory, out in California, the land of fruit and nuts. And Neil is here to talk this afternoon about youth music programs, singing company, YP band, that type of thing. Let's see if Steve has made it back in. Steve's going to host this session to stop me coughing through the whole thing. But glad you're part of this. And let me just say to those folk joining us, if you've missed a session today or throughout the week, you can catch it all up on our YouTube channels. And we'll try and throw a link from Facebook for that. And you can catch up with all of the good stuff at the end of the day and consume that at your leisure. But it's good to have you on this call, and there'll be a time later on where I'm sure you can ask your own questions of Neil and just see if you can stump him or get his wisdom on all things music. Neil's a good friend of mine and has been over in the States for quite a period of time, originally growing up in Scotland, of all places. So we're just waiting for Steve Kellner, our host, and see if he's available, and then we'll get cracking. Everyone doing all right so far? You can wave at me, and you can give me the thumbs up. Everyone doing okay? Tobias Gillum on your third session of the day. Well done. You're going to get a prize for that by the end of the week. And I see Clay Smith here. Awesome. Good to see you, Clay. Can't see your face, but I see your name, which means you're listening in, which is really good. Okay. All right. Okay, just bear with me one moment. Okay, so here we are talking about youth music, and we have our special guest, Neil Smith. And Neil, I would just ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself, how you grew up and came to know the Army.
Well, hello. It's great to be with you this afternoon. Steve's right back there, which is great. Nick doesn't want to talk, so that's good. But I'm the Territorial Music Secretary here in the USA Western Territory. I've been the Music Secretary for just over 15 years here, and I've been in the US just over 20, I think. And I'm here, my family are here. My boys were both born in San Diego, Andrew and Callum. And Andrew's venture into the land of high school senior this coming year, which is kind of scary. And Callum has just turned 14. So along with the boys and my wife, Dawn, we attend the corps at Tustin Ranch. And we try to do what we can to be supportive of the corps. That's the important thing for me. The bells and whistles stuff that people reckon we do here at THQ is all good and well, but being at the core for me is the important part, and I try and do it as often as is possible. Sometimes I can't be there, but I do try. I'm responsible in this territory for the Territorial Youth Band and also for the staff band, and I'm the junior band leader at the Tustin Ranch Corps, and that's where I do, I think, my best work. I enjoy that. It's also a challenge. Those of you who are youth music leaders will know that it's a bit of a challenge, but growing up, I went to the Army when I was a baby. My parents are still active at the Corps, and my brother came along for a little while, and up in the north of Scotland is where I grew up. Then when I joined the Army, I moved down to London and went to the Corps at Woking and also Hanwell, which is a military kind of corps, used to be based around the corner from Nellerhall, the Royal Military School of Music. And that's kind of where I learned how to do what I do. So I've always been at the Army. In this current moment, I always plan to be at the army, but you never know, things might change. And it's who knows, but being a faithful soldier and committed at the core is something that's vitally important to me.
Right. Now, who were some sort of influential musicians on you when you were younger, Army or otherwise?
Well, it's fairly remote to where I come from, but there were two guys who were always at camp when I was a kid, music camp in the north of Scotland. Donald McGregor, who was the bandmaster in the Thurso Corps way up in the north, and then a guy called Mel Hawkins, who was from further south in Scotland, but they were always great encouragers. And then I remember by the time I was a kid, players like Wynton Marsalis were coming online and showing us how to do it. I've been fortunate because I've had great encouragers. My parents are fantastic, and they've always been really a major influence in my life too.
Right. Now, tell us a little bit about your time in the Guards bands. I know you did that for a long time.
Yep, I did that for 14 years. So I joined the Army when I was 16, and I went off to do my basic training, which was a bit of a shock to the system. I just wanted to play my trumpet, right? But there's a little bit more to it than that. And it was fun. I've been around the world a few times, been in some great places, met some really cool people, and based in London most of the time. The band was in Hong Kong when we handed Hong Kong back over to the Chinese in 1997, and that was pretty wet, but it was a great experience. You know, I don't think I would regret doing it, but I don't think I would do it again. That's for sure. It's a little different now since when I was there, but it was worthwhile. And you get to travel the world, meet lots of people, and it was fun. I played the cello as well when I was there. I did learn to play the cello. I didn't really want to do anything else. I didn't fancy being a violin player. Those should only be touched by experienced people. Not beginners on a violin. That doesn't work for me, so I didn't want to be one of those. So as well as the cornet and the piano, I had to learn how to play the cello.
Did you feel like your Army training helped you in your military banding career?
Yeah, I think so. My basic musical upbringing training was at the Salvation Army, and like a lot of people, then you kind of go on and use those skills that you learn, and then you go from learning music the Army way to learning music way, and but it's valuable, I think, and it's important. The work that we do on the ground level here often sets people up for significant careers not in the Salvation Army.
Right. And did you do school bands as well when you were young, or just Army, or how did you?
More or less just Army. There wasn't an awful lot of school band around. I had a teacher who was a jazz trombone player who played in one of the local jazz bands in town. But there wasn't really an awful lot of non-Army music going on at school at that time. When I see what my kid has to do now, I sometimes wish that I was maybe that involved when the time came, but it's probably okay not to be that busy.
Yeah. And then, so you did 14 years, and then what precipitated you moving on to something else?
Well, I hit the age of 30, which is big numbers, right? And it was probably just about time. I was fed up with being told to get a haircut every other day. Mm-hmm. And although I don't like to have long hair, it was just it was time to do something different. You stand still for hours and hours and hours, and it just didn't necessarily lose its appeal, but it was just, when it's time to do something different. And I didn't have very many, when I left the Army, my last engagement with the band was in Windsor at the castle for the Garter service with the Queen. And when I left there, I had nothing to do, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do, but I had a couple of things potentially lined up which didn't materialize, and then the opportunity came to present itself to come to the United States.
So that happened right around the time shortly after you left the service.
Yeah, I had about 6 months in between. So I left in June, and then it only took us until the end of coming January to get here.
And that was to become a DMD, correct? Is
Yep.
that right?
I went to one of the finest spots in the country, to San Diego, to be the divisional music director. And I was there for 5 years. And to be honest, it was an Ivor Bazanko thing. So Ivor called, he was the TMS, and he called and said, hey, there's a job going in San Diego. And we were like, not sure about that. Because we've been here a couple of times. I had finished a 3-month tour of US and Canada with the Scots Guards band. And so I knew kind of, a little bit about what was happening here, but we weren't really sure, but thought about it. And then I called him back and said, maybe we should talk about that a little further. So that was when I came, and I had no idea what I was doing, right? I was a musician and a Salvationist, but I'd never been a DMD. That there aren't such a thing, or there wasn't at that time in the UK, anything like that.
Right.
And so it's one of those things that you kind of look around to see what's been left for you, and when there's nothing there, you just make it up, right?
Right. Exactly. Now, let's talk about since we're talking about youth music, what about, YP band, singing company in your home corps? What was that like?
We had a pretty decent YP band when I was a kid. It doesn't happen anymore, but people used to move into the area for work. In the north end of Scotland, there was lots of stuff going on related to oil and all kinds of other things. And the Royal Air Force too, there were people around who were moving in and out from those kind of things. But it doesn't happen anymore. But families moved in, and some of them stuck around. So we had a decent junior band. I think I can remember being in the singing company. We used to wear these sort of black blazers with red junior band things on it. It's looking right now, it's kind of bizarre, but we used to wear those, and we were fairly busy. There's used to be lots of stuff happening that we would go and do, and in that small community up there, there wasn't much else to do, so you just kind of go with the flow.
Right. And did that YP band perform pretty regularly in the corps and the community?
Oh yeah, we played at the corps every week,
wow.
every week. And by the time I left, it was a festival series band at that time, doing pretty well.
Right. Do you think that's a pretty important part of YP banding, is to play all the time?
Oh yeah, to play it all the time. It doesn't really matter what you play. I'm particularly fussy about making sure that it's relevant. Doesn't matter how hard it is, if you can play it or not, but if it's not going to make a connection with people, that doesn't really work. But the opportunity to participate is important.
Right. So, I mean, were you very interested the whole time, or were you sort of like a lot of kids and sort of just did it for a while, and then something sort of sparked and you sort of took off? What about that journey?
No, I was probably pretty interested all the time. I would have been the kid who was there first and last out, and because my parents were involved too, my brother. I guess there comes a time where you just know that what you want to do, and I wanted to audition when I was a kid to join the band of the Royal Marines. Those guys with the white helmets.
Yeah. And
I thought, man, that looks cool, but because they're actually they're proper. We were too, but they're proper soldiers who serve on board ship. My eyesight wasn't good enough for that. So the next best option was to join the army. But I've always been pretty keen. I'm still a fairly keen musician now too, after all this time.
Right. And were you in singing company as well? Was that very active like the band was, or?
Yeah, I think I probably ended up playing the piano for the singing company a little bit too, but it was, I guess the band was fairly much more prominent, but the singing company was important too. And I was certainly a member of that until I couldn't do it any longer.
Right. I mean, how important do you think singing is for youth music?
Oh, it's vital. It's the thing that you can do without making very much effort. You don't need to buy stuff. You can just show up and press play. And it doesn't need to be fancy. You don't need 16 parts if you can sing in unison. If it's not, it's a good hook to get people involved. They see you can participate, and then you can go from there. There's nothing wrong with singing in as many parts as you can manage, but
Right.
if you can sing, and here in the Western Territory, due to the great influence of Ivor and Jeanette Bazanko, singing is a pretty prominent thing here too.
Right.
It's always been right up there as important.
Now, what would you say? This is sort of getting into our subject, I guess, in a way. What in a lot of corps, you start a lot of kids, and then there's sort of a bell curve. A certain percentage of kids keep going, and a certain drop off. I mean, it sounds like in your corps, a lot of people kept going. I mean, was that the case, or?
Yeah, more or less. Eventually people moved away, kids moved away to go to school, to get jobs and do whatever. But there was a good 5 or 6 year time period all at once where there was a consistent attendance, and some really good players too, people who just wanted to be there. And I think even now, the fellowship aspect of what we do keeps people connected. And the fact that back then we were all good buddies didn't go astray, really.
Yeah, I mean, what would you say sort of the secret to that is? I mean, what do you think? Why do you think it worked there? Because in so many corps, we just have a huge attrition.
Yeah, it's weird because it's kind of like my own corps right now too. I think there's investment, there's interest in the kids who are in those groups. So you build a relationship with the leader, with the folks at the corps, and you know that you can be loved and cared for there, and you're in a safe place too. And I think those things kind of speak for themselves, really.
Right. And what was the relationship between the senior band and the members of that and the YP music?
It was a fairly good one, actually, because that's not always the case, right? That's really not always the case. But it was a good one, and folks were pretty encouraging. I was the deputy bandmaster of the corps when I was 14, just after I became a senior soldier. And there were lots of roles that people were doing, that young people were doing, who were in the band and in the YP band as well. And it was a good relationship. People were encouraging, and it's always a bit weird when you're a younger leader because it doesn't always fly very well. But it seemed to be fine. But the relationship thing is the important part.
Right. So I know you lead the YP band in your own corps, right?
Yep.
So are you doing it sort of like it was done when you came up, or is it sort of a different atmosphere where you are, or what are the parallels and maybe not parallels?
Yeah, I guess there are some parallels. For me, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. I just tend to set my stall up and say, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. And let's just do it. But I think the relationship is the important part, again, because we're in constant contact with the kids in the group and their parents. I'm still right now even teaching some of them online every week, just to try and keep them connected. And it does follow the same model, I think. This is probably the end of my 3rd year, I think, responsible for the junior band, and I did help not as the leader, but as a helper. Prior to, I would sit and play second cornet or take rehearsal when the leader was gone, and so I've been connected to the kids in the band for a little while. But it does, it's a similar kind of setup, just maybe 40 years further down the line, I guess.
Right. Now, what advice would you have in places where, I mean, like a corps like yours, you have parental support. I mean, it's a lot of corps that I deal with. In fact, the corps I go to, it's kind of hit or miss whether
Right.
the parents are even in the corps or kind of even know what we're up to. Is there some?
Yep. Sure.
Is there some advice, to try to sort of mitigate that problem?
That's a tough one, because you want to include the parents and the kids' families in anything we do. Sometimes we're fortunate. Every single one of the kids in my junior band their parents come to the core, and their parents bring them and are present generally, especially on Sunday, maybe not necessarily during the week, but on a Sunday. But it is hard. We don't want to be, some of our core in this territory have stopped their picking up service. They're not going to go and pick up kids and do stuff. So, we'll see the benefit of that, which is there's no benefit in the end run, because we'll be looking for statistical numbers and we don't have them, because the only way to keep those kids connected is for somebody to build a relationship with them,
right,
and go and bring them to the core. I know things change, finances change, all the rest of it, but if we cut that part out and miss the opportunity, even if the kids' parents don't come, to get them to the core twice a year for a special something, or to even build a relationship and keep contact with them, then we miss the opportunity, I think.
Along the same lines, what about, I know you have some programs out in some of your core out in the LA area that are basically community music programs. What about the idea of trying to sort of bridge the gap between, in other words, they're not necessarily connected to the Sunday morning core experience.
Right.
What about trying to bridge the gap between what's called a community program and trying to get those kids over into your YP music program?
We've had a few of those. I'm not honestly sure, without crossing the line, how successful.
That's why I'm asking.
I know. So I think potentially we've probably not been intentional enough. So, we've got great opportunity for the kids to be brought up in this Christian environment, and we have this community-based program that would be important, but the most important part is to bridge those two together. So there has to be people from, if you would say, the church end involved in the community program, and then to try and get folks to come, you can do a special Christmas thing or whatever, a couple of things during the year, but it's important that we don't miss that opportunity. Gone are the days where everybody who comes to the Salvation Army is a uniform wearing Salvationist.
Right.
That's just moved from somewhere else, and they're just going to open their concertina box and keep going, right? That doesn't happen. So we need to try harder. We need to do better at that. There's been programs at my own core that was a spectacular community kind of program, but the correlation to folks attending the core on Sunday or even showing remote interest to come to a special event was virtually zero.
Right. So let's talk about just some challenges in leading, youth bands and groups, like some just basic stuff. What comes up? What are the things that are the typical obstacles, that you've faced, or other leaders in your territory have faced?
I guess even if you have a successful program, the consistency of that is hard. So when you have a change of office or two, not all of them believe in that kind of program and support that. So we sometimes see those things going by the wayside when that happens. Sometimes the core officer is the leader, and when they move, then the person coming after them doesn't have any of those skills, and that program goes out the window. We need to try. We have a huge discrepancy here that we've got. This territory has some excellent divisional music leaders, and they're all heavily involved at their core. But without that input, a lot of us would be floundering, and we need those challenges are not universal either. Each of our divisions have their own challenges, and they have their own mindset, they have their own approach to things, and it's really hard to standardize things. But I reckon if you're a leader at the core and are consistent, build a relationship with the kids and their parents, almost anything's possible.
Right. Now, if you were going to start, let's say you're in a corps where there really isn't anything, like,
Yeah.
where would you start? What's the easiest thing to do? And, how would you get going?
Well, the easiest thing to do would be to get a little singing group together. These kids can come. If you have a piano player, you're in good shape. If you don't, it works just fine. And to encourage them to get together and do stuff, it's really it's harder to start a beginner band.
Right.
If you don't have the skill. And if you're the DMD on a regular 3-month visit, that doesn't really help a lot, because there's nobody in the meantime to help. But the singing thing, as you already mentioned, is important, and it wouldn't be hard to do. You can find stuff. There are online resources all over the place. Like, you can do a little musical, dead easy, get people together, just have a little singing. If you have somebody who's a little creative, that would be an attractive thing to start. But the corps might not have the money to even buy some cheaper instruments. And in this day and age, when people buy them, they're not always willing to lend them to you, because they might not see them again, right? So that becomes harder to do. In the old days, you used to be able to pick up whatever and share it around, but people don't part with things anymore because they might not be able to replace them. But there's no reason why most of our corps shouldn't have a singing company. We did our Encore program, which is like the Star Search program in the East. We're just about to start preparations for year number 10. And we used to have a singing company competition here in the West, and it got kicked out for whatever reason. And one of the things I wanted to do was to bring it back, but the only way we could do it was under the umbrella of Star Search, not Star Search, Encore, because people didn't necessarily like the competition element, but we get that in everything else that we do. Our kids do that all the time.
Yeah.
So to dangle the carrot, so our number of singing companies and the number of kids singing all the way across this territory has gone up considerably in the last 9 or 10 years, because we have this program that kind of dangles the carrot, and they all want to participate to win. There's nothing wrong with that. And then we get them together and have a great celebration. So yeah, the easiest thing to do would be to start some singing. Or if you got somebody play a recorder, that's not my skill for sure. But things like that, it's they don't cost a lot of money. You don't have to be shelling out hundreds and hundreds of dollars.
Well, since band is a good bit more difficult, give me a little pitch on why we should do it. I mean, it's definitely orders of magnitude more difficult in terms of just equipment. You have to read music, you
right.
Learn how to operate the machinery and all that kind of thing.
And that can take a while. And I think for those of us those of us connected who expect a quick fix for that, it's like, here, you got 15 kids here, we'll give you some money from whoever's just given us this, and next week the band needs to be here on Sunday. That doesn't work. We've had some schemes around too where outside folks give our kids lessons. I'm not a firm believer in that. The people who were in the corps band at my corps helped me along. And I don't see why there's any reason that we can't help our own kids. I have regularly 5 or 6 senior band helpers who come to junior band every week, and will sit in. Sometimes they'll fill in if there's a part missing, but they'll encourage them. And generally we can do without them playing. But it's part of what we do. It's part of who we are. It's what some people expect from us. But if we haven't moved on from 1850 in the way that we deliver those, that brass band approach, then we're not going to do very well. But there's a great sense of teamwork, and something that you have to work hard at. Some of my kids in the junior band seem to have been on the same spot for like eternity. And then all of a sudden, just like that, it'll click and you can see the light go on, and it's like, oh, now I know. There are two young ladies who I teach sisters every week right now, and like the last 3 weeks, maybe one of them, in my opinion, all of a sudden the light has just gone on, and now it's hard to teach two of them at the same time because they're now at significantly different level. But if we keep what we do relevant and encourage our young people, then a band in any shape or form is a good way of a team accomplishment. It's not a solo thing, it's a team sport.
So let's talk about starting a beginner band. You have any sort of like, numbers limitations, all the kind of stuff? Like for instance, in my corps, I'm pretty much the instructor. There's not,
Right, sure.
We have a 5-person band and 3 of them are kids that I taught to play. And, I mean, what do you think about group lessons, individual lessons? How many can you handle? Do you start anybody on an E-flat instrument, or do you make everybody, all that kind of like nuts and boltsy kind of stuff?
Sometimes it depends on the instructor as to how many people they can handle at once. Some people are better at crowd control than others and can communicate that well with 2 or 3 people or just the one. We tend to, here's time for confession. I'm a horrible beginner starter person. That's not really my skill set. Once you have a little bit more of
Nothing going,
just a little bit, then I can work with that. But I think the right thing to say is maybe I don't have the patience for a raw beginner. So we have folks on the corps who are really great at that. And my wife Dawn has taken care of some of those starter kids, and we're finding that we've had a good flow. I had 19 of them in the band at one point not so long ago. We lost a couple here and there, and now in our beginner class we have one kid who is Josiah, and after that, because of whatever it is, we don't have anybody after that to fill his shoes when he comes into the junior band after having been a beginner. We don't have anybody right now who will take up that spot. So there's lots of encouragement, lots of patience required. And, some people do it fine. We tend to make them wait until they've got no gaps in the front.
Right.
Sometimes the kids are desperate to get going, so we try and encourage them. But I think the secret we have is we have a good team, and there are people who can handle that raw beginner from day one aspect and do a really great job of it.
Right. Okay. Just moving down this little sheet here. What about just rehearsal planning for a YP band? What is it? How are you picking the music, or
right?
How long do you work on the warm up, or kind of that, parsing all that out?
We have every week we do around about 50 minutes is all we have, 50 minutes for rehearsal. We follow the same company. There's a little gap in between where we have to round everybody up. And so we don't have an awful lot of time. And in rehearsal, I'm a fairly quick worker. So we do some scales to start with. And then, there's the obligatory, my valves don't work. So you spend the next 10 minutes unclogging all that stuff, right? And trying to make sure that the mouthpiece comes out and that there's enough space between wherever's in there so that the air can flow into the horn. So we have generally a bit of distraction, usually in the same area of the band every week, right? But I like to try and be fairly well prepared. So I have I'm a fan of the AIS material, right? It works great for our group, and we're grateful that the Southern Territory keeps churning that out. And I've used some first things first as well that work. And we've even, the last couple of things we looked at were in the Unity series. So we're moving up a little, but I can accommodate everybody I have in AIS. Some of the older material, I don't like the print, so sometimes there's too many cues and the kids get confused. But generally, I could probably produce a level 1 piece on a Tuesday night and play on a Sunday.
Oh, nice.
if I have to. I prefer not to do that. So I would like to look at a couple, but I tend to have like half a dozen things that we can play just like this. So the junior band rehearses every week on a Tuesday. We play every Sunday in Sunday school assembly, and then maybe once a month or whenever we get the opportunity, we play in the regular holiness meeting, usually before the meeting as the prelude, and then we'll do the opening song. And then when we do the opening song, they're restricted to what we can handle.
Right.
But we're usually well rehearsed, so we know a few weeks in ahead that this is what's coming. Or if I can't find one that works, then we'll just quickly scratch basic 4 parts from the tune book and put it in a key that we can handle and make that work. But we like to have a number of things. So I'm always looking, I have a 3-tier thing, stuff that we know very well, and we'll just keep revisiting. We can play every 6 weeks, one of those. And then stuff that we've looked at for a couple of weeks that we're learning, and then we always read something new every week. The sight reading thing is important to me, and to plan that rehearsal. So 50 minutes goes by in a flash if you're not careful. But again, we have a fairly tough schedule in the fact that we have to have music ready every week. So I'm fortunate because I have a number of older players now who can get by. But generally now I'm finding that most of the kids in the band can play most of the stuff we give them. Some, if it's a little too hard, if we're raw beginners and we just crossed the line where we want to encourage them to come into the band, then I'll maybe write a little third cornet part.
Yes.
Just to get them to play in the group, not all of the notes, but some bigger ones, just so they can get the team spirit approach, so that they can play. But I don't let them do that for too long. Because I have to be well prepared, too far ahead of the curve to get that done successfully. I don't want to be scratching it out when rehearsal starts. And I forgot really what you asked me now. But
well, that's a good advice. That we've done a similar thing in our conservatories in the summer. If the second band is going to join the first band, for instance, we march a parade usually on 4th of July in Washington. Yeah. So I've written third cornet, third horn, third baritone parts, so that those guys can play along with whatever march that the top band is doing. I would call that the El Sistema method. That's what they do with the orchestra music. They have simplified parts. It's really it gets the kids involved at a younger age, and they like to play with the older kids.
Yeah, and just before we went into non-participation mode back at the end of March, we had done Sunday morning. When the junior band actually played along with the senior band, and we played a hymn tune. I think we played Holy, Holy, Holy.
Yeah.
But I had some of the kids who could cope played from the tune book, and then I had made an easier part for the rest. Just so
that's a great idea. It would be great to kind of gather all those hand-scrawled manuscript parts into one big pot somewhere and put them online so people could just go on and
I have flute parts from camp and all kinds of things.
Oh yeah, I know we all have them. We all have them. So in a rehearsal, you're starting a new piece. This is for our young bandmasters. I mean, where do you start? I mean, are you just trying to get the right notes and rhythms? Do you have the kids clap the rhythms, or what's sort of job one?
I usually like to make sure that first of all everybody has the right piece and it's the right way up. And then we know what key we're in. So I try not to go too far away. Three flats or sharps would be my utmost, I think. And that would be pushing it. But so that everybody knows, we like to talk about what key we're in. And one of the things I like to do, I've been trying to do since we started in September last year, this was going to be our year of great music making. So the fact that you can play the notes, is okay, but we've been trying to take a more musical approach. It doesn't have to be so loud, you have to shove your tongue all the way to the end, but we're trying to make it sound as nice as we can. So I like to play the thing all the way through when we can, if we can, and then figure out where our issues are. If we're doing something a little bit more complicated, when we do our encore competition, we tend to do level 3 would be the junior band category, and then maybe 1 would be the beginner band.
Right.
I tend to play it through and find out where the issues are, Sometimes before I'll ask them to look at it and say, hey, let me know if you see something that bothers you that you can't handle, and we'll talk about it before we do it. Usually, you know, as a leader, you would know your kids and know where they're going to go astray a little. But it generally, to get the chance to play, to listen, and to figure out where it all fits. We don't always clap rhythms, but I tend to make them sing a little bit so that they know what it's supposed to sound like and where it fits. And generally, we've been fairly successful.
And are you, I mean, it sounds to me like you're of the school of, you know, not doing a whole lot of starting and stopping, but just try to play more.
Oh, yeah. I've got 50 minutes and I've got to be ready for like 3 weeks in a row. I don't have time to start and stop.
Right.
But we do as we need to. So, you know, I don't like to leave anybody behind. You know, there are pockets around the band, second horn, second corner. I have 6 second corner players, and we're making steady progress, but there's no talking, there's no goofing around, there's no cell phone use.
Right.
And we just have to keep moving. They'll learn more by playing than listening to me talk.
So what happened? I mean, if you feel like you're getting stuck, this is also for young bandmasters, like something, you know, you just can't get them. I mean, I guess one answer is maybe the music is truly above their heads, but what about sort of strategies to kind of get over the hump?
Yeah, it can be hard. Sometimes it takes a few weeks to come unstuck. There are a few things that we played that maybe not quite everybody's been on board, but I would know that hopefully if we played it 6 months from now, we would all be able to play that. So I generally just try to encourage them. It's like, there's no shame in not being able to play it to start with. And the fact that you might not be able to always read, I can read and see and hear what it sounds like. And they get used to, you know, to figuring out where things are in relation to everything else. But it can be hard. You have to know the kids you're working with, because some of them, you can't push them too hard if they're, you can't push them too hard. Although you can set your expectations and hope to get there, but you want them to feel encouraged as well, that they haven't just wasted their time by coming to the core. Right. And going home feeling completely demoralized. That doesn't work.
And how do you work private lessons into this format, or do you?
Generally, we don't really. Some of the kids in the band have them anyway. Some of them play at school. And then since the end of March, I've been teaching 3 of them on their own. I know there's a handful of the rest of them still practicing as well, but we will sometimes, if it doesn't come under the category of private lesson, but we will send the kids with our 5 helpers, or if I know I'm going to need more. I tried to do once a month, especially if we were starting something with a bit more substance, to have the senior band guys who come take section by section. So take the kids off, and the first cornets go with whoever, and the tuba players go with whoever, and then to start breaking that down and looking at it. And then, but we'll look at it together to see, you know, where the issues are. Then they go off and somebody helps them for a little bit. And then half an hour later, you come back, and actually we've made progress already. Because they feel that they've the little bit of work that they've done, somebody's shown them some interest.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty big issue, this sort of ratio of group activity to individual attention, you know, because most core YP bands, seems like you've got kids on maybe 3 or 4 different levels, especially if you've got years, and, you know, and you can see a kid is not getting it. Some kids are fine, but this young guy needs, or gal, you really got to get them in a room, and you know, and it's just like if you're sort of undermanned, like most cores are, it's hard to figure out.
It is
what, you know, how much time you could go all year in the group, and most of the kids would do fine, but there's a certain percentage that are just underwater, and if you don't get them off by themselves, they're going to be a problem.
And we will sometimes, if I'm aware that somebody's not doing so well, but I don't really want to stop or give up the time, we often have a couple of people who are just sitting around, you know. So I will ask one of them to come and help me quickly, say, hey, why don't you take this guy for a few minutes and see what you can accomplish? And it generally works. I'm always a bit cautious about singling them out as well, because you don't want to single a kid out so they feel inadequate. But at the same time, it's an indication of that. I think that we want to be able to help them to improve that skill that they have a little of already.
Okay, everybody, before I ask Neil some more questions, I just want to remind you about tomorrow, a couple things. Private lessons, there's a lot of slots available. I taught a kid in Scotland actually this morning, Neil.
Oh, that's good.
And so there's a lot of slots available, and that's quite a list of teachers. So you have to take advantage of it if you haven't. Boston Brass Clinic tomorrow at 11 a.m., I believe, right after Morning Manna, fantastic group who has been to TMI before. After lunch, Bill Heim is doing a worship planning seminar. Really, probably nobody better at that than Bill. Yep. And then at 3 p.m., Ronnie Murchison doing a core leadership workshop as well. So those are all really great. You really ought to get online and take advantage of all that stuff. So how do you work the, let's stay with the technical a little bit, one more question. Conducting a youth band as opposed to conducting, the territorial band, is it different for you? Like, are you
neither group watches very well.
Are you simplifying? Are you,
I'm a fairly straightforward conductor, I think, anyway. I just like to make sure you do tend to be, with the junior band, I tend to be more of a metronome, just to try and make sure that everybody knows exactly where it is and that we can all stick together. I wouldn't do anything fancy or crazy anyway. But the idea is the same. My responsibility is to try and keep everybody together.
And do you mind things like counting things off as opposed to just giving a pickup or, little?
Oh, no, I don't mind at all.
Right.
We talk about this often. And my thing is, if I just go like this, then, those young players can be forgiven for coming in the wrong place because they're not looking at paying attention. But I'm prepared to help set them up to do well. So if I have to count 1, 2, 3 and go, and then there's no excuse then. If I go like that, they have an excuse if they don't know. But my quest is to help them as best as I can.
Right. Now, how do you inject the sort of spiritual dimension into the rehearsal or any kind of youth music? What's your methodology? Do you like to stop and pontificate, or just sort of do it along the way, or read the words, or what's your methodology?
Yeah, we sometimes would relate the words. Colonel Doug O'Brien, who plays second euphonium in the band, comes and sits in with the junior band. So he is our kind of go-to chaplain kind of guy. We tend to associate with what we're doing as we go. Usually I find that on a Tuesday night when you get into 8:30, when some of them have been at school since 6 o'clock in the morning, is not necessarily a time for pontification. But by keeping them connected, by bringing them to Sunday school, by the junior band playing, we know that they're going to go to their Bible class right after that. And we always pray together. We don't do often enough, but we were looking at the idea of bringing people in, or maybe between the junior band and sing company, just quickly getting together and sharing a few thoughts every now and again. But again, we're on a pretty tight schedule. And then we do keep in close contact with those kids and their parents all the time anyway, not just on a Tuesday. So we kind of, by the way we do what we do, we show them that Christian love in that area.
Yeah, it seems like it's a bit more of a challenge. You probably remember the days when senior bands would have spiritual meetings. You had whole meetings where you didn't play. You just, once a month or whenever it was. Yeah. Or there was a little bit more time. People were willing to come out to the core a couple nights, 3 nights a week or whatever. Those days, you have to do it in a hurry.
Right.
But you do have to get it in. Obviously, it's got to be more than just a music program, or
of course.
we wouldn't be doing it.
Yep.
Okay. Since we're getting towards the end here, the virus thing is on everybody's mind. If you got any, what are you trying to do? this coming fall? I mean, how are you trying? I know you mentioned you were giving some Zoom lessons, to some kids, which sounds like a good idea. I mean, how are we going to kind of keep going? What do you see happening this fall?
Well, it does change every day, and it's just bizarre, really. We were opened up here for a few weeks, and I got to go to the corps on Sunday to play the piano, and now we're closed again because you can't sing or play or do anything. We're trying to devise a plan here to just keep visible throughout the territory, for sure. If you turn on your computer, every 2 seconds you'll see a music group or an art group or something sharing an online contribution, and people are doing things they'd never dreamt of having to do, right? Even my mother, the other day, they have a new corps officer and they've gone to do an online thing. Well, that would be the worst thing in the world for my mum to do, I'm sure, but she did it. And I think keeping ourselves relevant and visible is going to be important for a while. I don't know where we're headed. We have online WMI next week, Monday through Friday next week, and I sometimes feel we might be clutching at straws, but we're trying to keep people connected. I did a rehearsal a couple of weeks ago in the Starlight Music series for the summer. Did a songster rehearsal, and it was a little odd because I was in my office talking to myself and rehearsing myself, but there were people on the other end who were I think singing. I mean, they're all muted, but I think we're going to have to do anything we can to keep people connected, because a few Sundays ago I was in my kitchen peeling some potatoes for lunch and kind of forgot that it was Sunday even.
Right.
If you get to the stage where you have no idea what day of the week is. I recorded a thing a couple of Sundays ago on the piano for the corps, and I went to Costco on Sunday morning because I'd forgotten. I'd already done that. I'd forgotten it was Sunday. So, for somebody who's all in with both feet, going to the corps whenever you can, even that is a challenge. And our Sunday worship is all online. The territory here is encouraging people to do, and I've seen some really good things. We're able to benefit from people all over the world actually doing some really great things that we can watch our own and then share in what they're doing. But there would be a caution there is to not make it too fancy or too many bells and whistles, because well, for a number of reasons, but it does make it a distraction. So I think we've got to keep doing our best to make that work. And even when we're done and can go back to church, I think our online presence within the Salvation Army and the ministry we have would be different. I just don't know what that is. We've met every week online with the divisional music directors in this territory, and the number one overriding concern is that when we get to the fall, what are we going to do? We're program people. We have no program.
Yeah.
And they're all doing really great work. Not all in the music field right now, but they're teaching online. Some of them, one of them up in Oregon is teaching like 25 kids every week. We just have to do what we can, and when we can, then we need to get back and roll our sleeves up. And it might be different. We may have to do it differently. But I think we have to accept that and not just say we can't, but we can. We're just going to have to go around about and do something in a different way. Otherwise, I don't know that there'd be much for us to do.
Yeah, I would just follow up what Neil said to everybody who's listening or will listen. I think it is a time where you can develop individually, because you can't really be in groups much. So think of it as sort of a year sabbatical where you're trying to get your stuff together, get better at something, watch some of these online things and gain a little knowledge or something, skill, and then so that when we get back out there and we can actually be together whenever that is, we're not coming in under there's going to be a little bit of that. Every group's going to be under, because then we'll have not been together. But I mean, if the individual links in the chain have gotten a little stronger, then maybe we'll actually gain something out of this when we do get back together. Just to finish up, obviously you think youth music is important in a corps, and I do too. Just give us a little pep talk for it's mostly young people leading these groups, and you and I are probably the exception doing what we're doing at our age with little kids. Any sort of final words for those folks?
It's I get to be with a staff band from time to time here when we meet. Get to do great things, and the Territorial Youth Band. But my most important work is done at the core with a junior band, and it's hard work, but it can be particularly rewarding. We talked about the light bulb going on when some of these kids can actually suddenly realize, wait, I can do that. And we often get to the stage within what we do as we're expecting someone else to do it. And we might be willing to help, but we don't want the responsibility. But if you're smart, you don't shoulder that whole thing on your own. You find a couple of friends to help you. You hook up with somebody who can encourage you so that you're not struggling, because it can be being a leader in any shape or form can be pretty lonely, right? You're stuck up there on your own, and everybody else can do better, but you're the guy who's got to make it work. And it can be hard, but at the core there should be no excuse, because there should be, hopefully, somebody, even one person, or if you're a little further away, your divisional music department should be able to come alongside and help and encourage and help you with the resources. It's immensely rewarding to be able to work with those young people, because we need them. We're all getting older, and when we can come back to church after having been gone for 6-8 months, I just said that it'd be easier to maybe hit the beach or go to Costco on a Sunday morning, but we need everybody to be involved and to be interested in the church. And that doesn't mean that that's the reason you go, but if you can be useful and encourage somebody, because people encouraged us, then that's the vitally important thing. And part of the church, the music program and within the Salvation Army is important. And if we don't step up and encourage people and keep things moving forward, keep it relevant, doesn't mean it has to stay the same. But if we don't do that and wait for somebody else to do it, then that somebody else isn't going to do it. Great. And we'll be looking around, wondering what else has gone on. But we've done nothing to help it. So.
Well, thanks, Neil. It's a great knowledge and heart, and thanks for doing that. I hope everybody got something out of this. I'm sure you will if you look at it. Nick, I'm going to turn it over to you if you need to make any announcements.
My thanks to Neil for helping us with that. It's really important that we get youth music going at a core level, and for some people, it's their only entryway into both church and also music. So it's a double whammy if we can get it done, and nobody on here is too young to help with youth music at their core. So I really appreciated Neil's thoughts and his heart on that, and for Steve for a good interview. And I had a bit of a coughing fit this afternoon, so I was grateful not to have to talk for anyone. But very good, Steve, and thanks to Neil. And this will go up on our YouTube channel tonight, so you can view it, and maybe if you were working today you can see this. Plenty of good stuff happening tomorrow. Steve outlined Boston Brass, Bill Himes, Ronnie Murchison. Private lessons are still available for those that want to take advantage of that. So it's been a really good first day for TMI, and it's good to see folk on here, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. All right, thanks everybody. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Steve.
Pleasure. Thank you.
See you soon.